And then we're going to switch to this camera. All right. Morning from South Australia. Hi, Carvok. Hello, Dan and Colin. Hi. All right, so what do we think? Honestly, it's pretty nice. I think he says he doesn't like the bass, but I think the bass sort of works okay. It's maybe a little dull for the style, right? Like the style of painting is a bit more like cartoony. It's a little more saturated, so maybe the bass isn't necessarily working stylistically. Flapjack Nickelsack. Hi, thanks for the 2 months. I think the stomach kind of works. The like glossy, gross stuff. I think one of the things I'm seeing, this is also pretty nice. The shoulder things, like the shoulder pads, doing this sort of like patterning thing. I think one of the things that I feel like I'm kind of missing is a bit of like some of the lines look sort of thick, like some of your shadows are a little thick. Maybe some sharper edge highlights would give a little more definition here and there. So I think what I'm kind of looking at is like, say you got these guys, right? These like leather straps. I'm missing some like hard lines here, okay? So things like this, which is going to give like some more definition to these elements, right? It may look a bit much like this, but when you kind of zoom out, right, it looks like it might be too much like this, right? But when you look at it like in scale, that extra lining there helps some of these elements stand out a little more. Really the key here when you're doing this sort of lining thing is that you want this dark line right next to this light line, right? So even this, like, this dark line could be like a little thinner. So you get this light, dark, light, right? That's gonna enhance the contrast on that guy. Okay, so something like this, right? And I think you have a chance to do that in like quite a few spots. So things like on the hand, right? Like, you know, it's so dark under here that maybe you don't have to go as light, but like some more definition on these elements. Okay. Right, this leather kind of lacks some definition, so we can punch up the definition a little bit more on this. What happens when you don't have these sort of things and like you look at the figure like this, like everything sort of starts to blend together. So we have to sort of overdo some of the definition. This is why like when you talk about like the heavy metal style with like the sharp edge highlights and stuff, this tends to be why they do this for the box arts, because it really helps the readability. So I think doing some of this would go a long way into adding some extra definition. Things like on the shoulder pad, right? You've got this line, but there's nothing that like defines this edge, okay? So by defining this edge, we're going to create this like this light line, right? This line of light, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like you can do the like dots and things to create like a sharper line there. But what it does is it really creates this contrast between like, now you have a dark line here, right? this dark line creates a nice separation with the light line, right? I also think there's like maybe a bit too much in terms of color going on. I'm not so sure like this blue really works. I think maybe going back to the orange instead would have been a better choice here. You kind of introduce this blue out of nowhere. So something instead, like instead of going to this blue, right, like we could do some sort of this orange instead, might help to stick within the color scheme that we've sort of established. Right. I mean, you guys tell me, like, between these two, right, like, does this seem to, that blue, does it really fit the color scheme, or this, right, sticks within the sort of given scheme that we have? Eye, dog face, and perceptron. Right. So really, I think, Bruce, what's going to help, right, is just like trying to separate elements some more, right? We're aiming for readability in this case. And I think you just have like a bit too soft of edges at time, right? So things like around these gums, right? Look what happens to the teeth, right? You've got this dark shadow, right? This really bright light that comes to the edge of the tooth, which is nice for giving volume and stuff to the tooth. But then as it comes back, it just goes like straight, it just blends into this dark, and then it goes dark, and then there's a shadow of the gums, and it's really hard to see where that line is that separates these two shapes, right? So sometimes what I would say is instead of just like slowly blending back, you kind of want something maybe more like this. Maybe like this is as dark as you want to go here. And then you have like an even darker line that sort of separates these, right? So something like this creates a more clear line of separation. And then now that I've got like that clean line that separates them, I can also take some of this glossiness here, right? And I can create some more light that separates that more. Yeah, but verdigris doesn't grow on, it doesn't happen on steel, it happens on copper. Okay. So you create a sharper line of definition. Now you can come back with some of this like brownish tone, and we can push in some of those brown tones that you had, because now I have an even darker line separating them, right? Okay. Now, what else? I like these sorts of little like veiny things that you got going on. That stuff's cool. You could maybe even go a little heavier on that. Like you could include more. Right? You can do these little sorts of things if you want to play around with that kind of effect. And that's like a very subtle addition, you know? Things like this, right? So let's take this for an example. Okay, you have this little boil, right? And you've got this very soft shadow that goes all the way into this. Right? You're so focused on being smooth that like some of the shape gets lost, right? So we want to try and get the shape back. Okay, I like on this one I can't really read where that shape of that boil is because it just blends right into the skin, where if I do something like that, it makes that shape a little more clear. Okay. The face and stuff's all right. I think he maybe went a little heavy on the green. think I might have gone with something that's like slightly more, let's see, maybe something slightly more yellowish, camo-y sort of green like this, right? I'm not so sure you needed to go quite so heavy. Okay, something like we can tone this back a little bit. It's so punchy green that like it starts to feel too cartoony for the character. Like here, if these are supposed to be more like boils or something, I'm kind of losing the shape there. So really, I think, yeah, I think readability and like just sharpness on certain elements is going to go a long way to like creating more readability on your pieces. Okay. And I get you're trying to be very smooth and everything. Like this is nice, but even this, like you could bring this light up a little bit more so that we get, instead of this like soft transition between, that there's like this clear line that separates them. Yeah, I think you do a nice job on like the grubs and stuff. But yeah, so for me, I think just try and find shapes that need to be a little more defined, so it's nice and clear where like the separation of elements happens. Let's look at the back real fast. See how we feel about the back. Don't love this. This is a bit too scratchy for me. I don't really think that's how a football looks. I understand you're British, so you wouldn't know. That's a joke. But I would probably have gone with like a stippling instead, to create that like leathery texture of a football, So little dots and things will create a more football texture. But here, right, it's like this, you need something like this to create that line, right? So we're pulling that shape out more. Even these, right? This, I don't understand this like dark line here, right? It's like, where is the edge of this shape? Okay. So I need something like this brown to really show like where that line is that separates the two. Okay. And if it's, see how blurry this looks? And this has like a nice sharp line, right? This sharp edge. Okay. Then you can think like, all right, if this is sunken in, right, then we can add a little bit of light on the bottom to show that it's like pushed in, and that like bottom lip catches a little light, right? This looks pretty good, but again, yeah, there's just some like line work missing. Where's my highlights like on the armor elements, Definition. Okay. So I think that will help you out. Even this, right? It's like, where is that definition between these two? Okay, like this doesn't need to be so black in here. You could have gone with something like this, right? This like more brownish tone. And then this could have come over, right? We could have done something like this. Okay, which horn is more readable, right? It's like this is, I'm trying to get the shape of the horn. It's like this or this. Okay, on these like parts here, right? I probably also would have just done a more typical white lace for the football. But like, I want to see that material contrast, right? So let's look at the two, okay? You know, like if I do the old trick of doing this guy, right? Like, can you see my lace versus the lace that he has, right? The laces he's done, they're just gone, right? When you look at it like this. But the lace that I painted, you should be able to see, right? So it's like we've got to create material contrast, okay? The weathering and stuff, yeah, is nice, right? Like, I like the idea you're kind of going for on the armor with this like cracking and stuff. But yeah, the just defining elements more. This is gonna go a long way. All right, cool. Who's next? Reject. Reject says, hello, I would like some feedback regarding ways to increase rendering and definition on this model. Oh, well, let's talk about definition some more. Started display painting after army painting in January. It's my 5th piece first. All right. Is it doing the thing again? It's so annoying. All right, hold on. Unplug it. I don't know why it does that. It's very annoying. But okay. Let's see what we got. All right, how to increase definition more. Okay, so if we look at it like this, right? It can be very hard to see what is going on with certain elements, okay? This is in my last stream I did Kingdom Death model, right? Where I talk about a lot about how to create material separation through value, okay? So what is happening here is that you're putting so much contrast into every material that it starts to become difficult to read what are different materials, okay? The only thing we're relying on is color value at the moment, or is color separation at the moment, all right? I'm gonna hammer this a lot, but okay, so if we go like this, right, everything is sort of the same, other than like the hair, and maybe the feather, right? Everything, sure, some of the like black parts read more black, but like look at the bag, right? Tony Kant minis. Right, it's like so much contrast on the bag that like it's hard to read that there's like a separate element there, okay? So what I would recommend is like we actually want to reduce contrast on like value contrast on this in order to create more like readability and more separation between other parts, right? So it's like I can brighten more of this up. This does not need to be this shadow. Now I can leave that very dark red, right, for the like the line work, okay? But the actual like base light and shadows do not need to be that much. Okay, so like separating here the individual lines, right? And then, yeah, I can take something maybe slightly in between these and I can soften this out a little bit, reduce this some, okay? And we can focus on the volumes a bit. It's like you try it when you try and create so much contrast that like, right? There's nothing here that's making this readable, right? It's just, it's too much, okay? Like you're trying to push the contrast so far on every part that it loses the like color for one, and it's just too separated, okay? So here I can grab something like this, right? Maybe if I want to warm it up more. Does this make sense, guys? Right? Like, where is the midtone in this at all? It's like you go from like pure dark, this like purpley dark red, right, to immediately to like this light bone color with nothing in between. Okay, so there's just none of the like actual color of the bag left at all. All right. Okay, same thing happening on the skin, right? It's like this is like almost black. We don't need to go that dark. We can go like this works fine as a shadow. Okay? We can maybe even go lighter than that. We can maybe go with something like this, you know? That reads as a shadow just fine. Next thing, for definition, push the light up to the volume, right? Up to the edge, okay? Right, so that we have this like sharp line separating them. I jam. Okay, like here, you've got the highlight like here, but really if the light is like, I'm going to create more definition like this by pushing the light up to the next volume. Okay, so I've actually reduced the contrast. But I've made the stomach more clear that it's like a separate thing. Okay? Right, so what's the hair, you know? Like, is the hair supposed to be a light color? Is it supposed to be a dark color? If it's supposed to be a light color, like, why are the shadows pure black in here, you know? So if it's supposed to be like this whitish color, like, maybe something like this would work as a shadow, Okay. All right, so think about like what the shadow tones you're using. Okay, maybe we need to go slightly darker and maybe slightly more blue, something like this. All right. But think about the shadow tones and the values that you're using and like what the darkest color is, so that there's like a clear like difference in value between the two, right? The hair still looks shadowed and highlighted, right? But we don't need like pure black to separate these. Okay. We just need some kind of value contrast, right? Does this make sense, guys? Okay, which one looks more clean and when you can see the difference in the hair, right? And like this, where it starts to become kind of messy, right? And it's like, oh, it's like muddy because of these super blacks, or that where you can like see that there's like, okay, I can read the overall shape of the hair more, right? Okay. And then these like Jinx-esque like painting on the armor and everything might be a little too much. I'm not so sure it's. This is a thing about camouflage on miniatures. I don't love camouflage on minis because like you can do it on very specific elements, typically things like ponchos or stuff like that. But real quick, like, what is the purpose of camouflage, right? Does anybody know, like, the actual function of camouflage? Yeah, it breaks up shapes. It's supposed to, yeah, it's supposed to literally, like, to break up the form, right? So that like you don't see the silhouette and stuff as easily because we easily recognize like human silhouettes, right? So when you do camouflage on elements, or in this case like this crazy freehand, right? Like all over, what is it doing, right? It's literally making it's making the shape less readable, and readability is the thing that we like aim for a lot. So it can be pretty counterintuitive to do camouflage, or like counterproductive to do too much camouflage on a figure and like actually like break up the shape more, right? So yeah, what becomes like what might be interesting like here, right? Yeah, less is more. Like what might be interesting when looking like this, where you can see kind of like, oh, okay, this neon like graffiti sort of thing on the armor. When you look at it like this, right, just becomes noise. Okay, so that is a careful balance that you have to play. All right. Beowulf. Hello, Eric. First of all, I would like to thank you all the content you post, but you guys don't have to, compliment me every time you post something in the Feedback Friday, all right? I'm going to look at it anyways. I was wondering if you could get some feedback trying to learn NMM. Just started sketching in the metal work on the book, but any feedback on the armor? Okay. Let's look at this picture. All right. I mean, honestly, like, I think this is working pretty well. I think this is like pretty good. I don't know if you're going based off of someone's or like, because I know Lamb did like the original box art for this. So I don't know if you're using his as reference or something. I think it's working better on the armor than it is on some of the trim and like the what's it called? The chainmail? The mail? Sorry, don't want to offend any historical people. It was never called chainmail, it's just called mail. The thing I'm sort of seeing though is it's a little flat in terms of color. So Perceptron, if you are a sub and you join the Discord and you link your Discord to your Twitch account, you will get access to the Feedback Friday channel and you could submit your photos there. But yeah, so I think one thing is that like it's a little plain in terms of color, like it's a little flat. Okay, so I think we have like an opportunity here to maybe. One thing I was trying to ask, like when I'm doing metallics, is like what is the what kind of like environment am I going for? Like, is he outside? Well, okay, if he's outside, then you should probably see some more like blues and stuff showing up in the armor, right? This like pure gray type of like all gray, non-metallic tends to be more like most associated with like photos of armors that are taken in like museums and stuff where you don't see like studio photography, right? Exactly. So you're like, it's just like, okay, it's just flat and like perfectly gray because it was shot on like a white, background or in a museum with white walls and everything. Visit the chronicler with the raid. Hello, welcome, thank you. How was your stream? How's everyone doing? Okay, so one thing you can definitely try and do is try and introduce more like color variation here. Okay, so try and like think about, all right, what is the environment? What am I trying to sort of portray? Okay, like what sort of colors is the environment going to reflect? If he's outdoors, right, then maybe you're going to get some of these like gray browns, right? Things like this. Okay, so some of these lower facing planes might start reflecting more of these like brownish tones, right? Or maybe he's in like a grass field. Hi, hello. Stickle eggs. Thank you for the prime. Welcome. Right. So yeah, this is one thing you can try and do. Okay, is like definitely introduce more color in here. Color variation. Think about like, just between this and this, like which one's more interesting looking, right? Then you can play around with other things like, okay, if it's the sun, maybe we get some of these like warm colors just on like near like the actual sun reflection. Right, and they can be quite subtle. The other thing, and I see it here, is you have this really bright white value, right? This should only show up once, okay, on any given volume. This is a cylinder, right? If I hold up this can to you guys, All right, hello. Where do you see? You can see that there's like. Let's change cameras. Okay, got my classic Red Bull can right here. Right, we've got this bright one and this other little line right here. I don't know what this line is. It's over on this side. Oh, it's that lamp. So there's two lamps in here, right? If I turn that one off, but that's because there's two light sources, right, in the room. If I block out that one, right, it goes away, right? So I'm blocking out that light. Now there's only one, right? So if it's outdoors, there's only going to be one light source, right? So you might have something like this, a cloud or something else, but you don't want the other ones to ever be like as bright as the main light source. So here I would tone that down just a little bit and let it just be one, right? So like this one is probably too intense. Here you've got two separate ones, like which one's the main one? All right. And this can also be a tough thing. Like I know people try and say like include these, but it's not really about like edge highlighting here. You don't need to necessarily edge highlight. You just want to create separation between the two planes. Okay. So you can use like dark colors to achieve that, right? It's defining the edge. It's not necessarily like highlighting the edge. All right, so even something like that defines that edge. It creates separation between the two. HIMOs. Okay, so that can go a long way. Ooh, excuse me. That's like just that, right? That can go a long way to cleaning it up. See, this introduces more information, right? And as far as the like golds go, yeah, this is just an exercise in edge highlights, right? So like edge definition. So just knowing like, okay, that's going to catch the edge here. This one's going to catch the edge, but then you get a little hit there, right? Like just knowing which edges. I've talked about this in videos where I've painted non-metallic before, but I've talked about the danger edges, right? So it's just knowing which of the edge, when you have these more like geometric shapes, which is the edge that's going to like catch the most light, right? Who's heard my term danger edges before? Who likes to live dangerously? Okay, but then like also getting good definition here, right? And the gold or brass is another thing that you can try and introduce more color into. Okay, so you can play around with these more, a little bit more saturated tones. All right. Things like on this lip, right? You got this like beat up worn kind of beat up edge, but this edge sort of follows this main highlight here. So this thing should probably be pretty bright. And you've done sort of this like chipping thing, but when you get something that's as bright as this, right? You're like dead smack dab in the middle of the highlight. Often this sort of effect will happen where like that's not enough. You'll get this sort of thing like this, where it's like that light is so intense that like it starts to spill over into the shadows. Okay. It's not like that the shadow is actually wouldn't necessarily be black. It's that like by how your eye reads it, it's like, oh, like, right? It's like if I take the can again, right? It's so bright that it like starts to, it's not a perfect line. You can see it's like, it's blooming, right? It's so intensely white that it like starts to spill over. Okay. So the same sort of thing when you do like scratches and stuff like this in dark areas, like that light is so bright that it actually like reduces the shadow in the light because it's just that intense, that strong. Right. Okay. Yeah. Hope that was helpful. Cool. All right. Next. Hello, Eric. I painted this guy to practice ambience and volumetric. My objective was placing a warm, strong light coming from the back left and a green OSL in the bottom front of the model. Also like some feedback on the NMM. Some flat areas confuse me since I feel leaving them painted with the same value makes them look flat, which is a very hilarious statement to me. Painting the flat things flat makes them feel flat. Can I get like the math things floating around my head? All right, so, okay. The OSL sort of makes sense. I think what you're really lacking here is just some like dark colors. Like the base is black here, but I'm not picking up like a lot of that on the actual model. All right, so you could definitely outline some things like a bit more. Push the contrast here. And like I don't feel like you're going as dark as you could. I'm not even on the like pure color, right? So I feel like you could push some deeper blacks into your metallics. I feel like you're trying to do a lot right here. But let's talk about the concept of like, you have two flat areas, okay? So it's like this. Let me draw another thing real quick, right? So let's draw some shapes, right? So you have this thing, which is kind of flat, and then you have this thing like this, right? And you have this shape and this shape. And then these are all made up of flat shapes like this, right? How do you make these look interesting when they're all flat? Okay, but they're metallic. Well, it's about the separation of elements, okay? So it's the separation of planes. So what you want is you want to, like you have two lights here. You have a light here and a light here. You have these two reflections. You need to pick one. All right. So maybe this one is just brighter. And this one is darker. And maybe it's slightly more greenish, right? Okay, so we're creating contrast between the planes. And you can also make a little assumption here that maybe there is some like roundedness to this. Okay? So, like, it might be close to flat, but we can like push some shape into it anyways. right? So maybe it's not perfectly flat. It's got like a slight bend to it. Right? And then, well, this is reflecting quite a lot, so why doesn't the armor reflect some more? Also, we're going to push some focus onto like the face this way by pushing the light up towards the face more. Right, so we can separate sort of here and create a bit more interest this way. And then what do we have? We've got the gun. Okay, so let's grab the color of the gun, and then we can create like a little reflection of the gun in his armor. Hello, hi. Are you a trained artist? Good information. Am I trained? I did go to art school when I was younger. Right, so we can do something like that, and maybe we can push like a little bit more. Okay, so we get something like that reflecting in there. And then what? Now we can, well, he's got beat up armor, so now maybe we come in and we create, I can't even paint small enough to do this, but because the image just isn't high enough resolution. This is the smallest brush I got. So now I can like come in and create some little like scratches and weathering and things to create some further interest. Okay, this also is like a bit much here, like, right? Also, if you're doing OSL, okay, use the color of the OSL. Don't use white, right? So if you want it to be like a green glow from below, you can push more white into the actual object, but like when you get to the glow part, like use the color of the object, right? It's like, I think about like a lightsaber, okay? What color when you see a lightsaber in the films, what color do they look? What's the actual color of the blade, right? Like, Will of the Brush, thank you for the prime. And Extifer. Extifer? Okay. What is the right? Guys, what's color is the actual like blade of the lightsaber? It doesn't matter which one. Yeah, it's white. All right. So the actual blade itself is white because the value of it is so high that it appears white, right? But if you think about like that's because the value is clipping on film, right? It's so bright red or green or blue that it goes past blue, and the only place left to go is white, right? But if you look at the color, like that the light, let's say you take Vader's lightsaber and it's red. If you look at the actual color that it emits, right, it's red. Okay, so the object itself in object source lighting might be white, but the light that it emits onto things should be the color of the light source. Okay. So use the color of the light source. Don't push like all the way into the whites, all right? And like this light source should be showing up on all this stuff. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. Yeah, yes, no. Good. Glad. I'm glad that makes sense. All right. Cool. Next. Scott, good job. Hi, Eric. Greetings from Singapore. Would love some feedback on my dwarf and his dogs, especially the dwarf's cape. I can't decide if the red should be toned down or should add more red elsewhere. That is very red. I kind of like it though. All right, let's get the main view, okay? All right. What do you guys think? I think the red works. I think it's pretty cool, honestly. Normally I see, like, I think you included it in enough places, technique-wise, like, this is quite good. Yeah, I feel like you've included it in enough places. Maybe, like, the one thing I would say about the red is, like, you could grab some, like, slightly more desaturated oranges, something like this, and, like, you've got these leaves. Maybe make some of them like slightly more intense orange, okay? Like instead of just brown, like think about like the colors of fall, and you can play around and get this color in sort of elsewhere where you want to draw attention by like making some of these like more orangish or even slightly more like reddish browns, right? Like sometimes you see like pretty, like especially if they're like fresh fallen leaves, you know, you get these like yellows and reds and orange leaves. I think that could be an interesting way to introduce some more of some more of these colors in here, yeah. So even just that, right? It's like you felt like this was too much orange, or like that the red was maybe too intense, but just doing that like kind of adds that bit more color, like splash of color that I think you felt like was lacking, right? Okay. What else did you want to know about? I mean, this thing is like quite strong. I like the greens and stuff that are showing up. You could maybe also play around a little bit with like having some of the orange reflect in like the metals a little bit. Just in a couple areas, like something like this, right? Where it's like, it's near the cape. Sometimes it doesn't even have to necessarily make perfect sense. Like it can just be like a sort of graphical thing. Like it gives you another way to include a little bit of that color. Like maybe here on the axe, right? Like instead of this green, like maybe you do this and it's like his mohawk reflecting in the axe. Like these little guys, right? So you can put little splashes of you can put little other splashes of color here in the metallics to further that, selling that effect of this like bright orange. Now, what I will say is I'm going to look at the back real fast because I noticed something on the back. So you're cooling off the back a lot, which is cool, is cool, okay. But there are some issues with the volumes here, particularly this one in general is you've got this shape, right? Okay. There's this shape to the cape, like if you were looking at it from above or below. When you're painting volumetrically, right, like the light is going to hit here if it's coming in this way, but it also hits here and it hits here, all right? So you're looking for tangents. So actually this volume right here should be in light. So the flats have light, the valley or the slopes do not, right? So just a little thing to point out. Yeah, man, this is quite good. Pretty strong. I don't have much else to say. Without seeing this guy in hand, I don't know. I think everything is rendered pretty lovely. It's good. How do I feel about the overall focus? Quite good, actually. Like, you did a nice job with the darker elements here. Maybe I could see, like, pushing the light here a little bit more. Just, like... I feel like maybe the ground is, like, slightly dark here, and you could, like, highlight this just a little bit further to try and, like, pull the focus even more. Let's see. Yeah, I think that helps, actually. Turn it down just a touch. Yeah, I would probably do that. The ground is maybe a little bit dark. Thanks, Ronan. Good job, though. Nice. All right. Yeah, so splash some more color in the base, splash some more color around the base, maybe get some reflections in the metallics, and then I think you'll feel better about those reds not being so super splashy. All right, Russell. I'd appreciate your feedback on this bust, especially on the hair volumes. I was going with the basic approach of convex shape equal highlight and facing main light equal highlight, but the shapes were confusing. Some areas worked better than others. Okay. So, all right. Hair. Yeah, how many of you, one's in chat if you've heard the term anistropic before. If you've been in my workshops, you should have heard the term. So, anistropic happens on, the best example I can give is Captain America's shield from the movies. Okay? So, anistropic is when you have any sort of like lines. You can see it on brushed metallics quite well. Let's see if I can get this on camera. So when you have something that's brushed like this, you start to get anistropic reflections. Okay, typically what you guys have probably seen is like the bottom of a pan where you have this like radial symmetry that is actually called an anistropic radial reflection. Watch faces, things like that, that have this like machined element to them. Do I even have anything? Give me a second. Let me see if I can find something that has that effect. Any of my coins or anything have it? No, they're all they're all like super shiny. Or they're like one direction. What about these? Nope, those are cast. Darn it. Anyways, the bottom of a pan, right? Let's get back to this camera. Well, not in my studio, I don't. I have them downstairs, but I'm not going to go run downstairs to grab a pan, right? So anistropic reflections, they run perpendicularly to the lines, right? So you have this grain to the metal, like the way it's sanded or machined or whatever. You have this grain. The lines, the reflections tend to run perpendicular to the grain, okay? Well, hair works very similar. So if you look at me, right? Oh, look how luscious my hair is right now, right? But if I go like this and I lay my hair flat across my face, where is the reflection on my hair, right? It goes, my hair is running this direction, right? But the reflection goes perpendicularly across the direction that the hair is running, right? So it's hair flows this way, reflections flow this way, okay? If I go like this, right? Now my hair is flowing this way, but the reflection runs like this. Nope, the other way. Sorry, it's like doing it in a mirror, right? So it now goes across, up and across like that. Right? So hair is also anistropic. All right? So if I go like this and I create a bend in my hair, right? You should be able to see that the hair is flowing this way, right, down, but the highlight runs across. Okay? Now, all that said, let's look at what's happening here. Okay, so you're kind of getting it, right? I can see in areas where you have it like correctly running across, right? It's like running this way, that way, right? This way, right? So it's roughly correct, but I think the thing you're missing is that, look at me, right? What color would you say my hair is, guys? Brown? Would you say I have brown hair? No, I would say it's like a dark blonde. All right. So I think the problem you're running into is that you're not including enough shadow on your hair. Okay. So we need some more tone. We need a bit more of these midtones in order to like get those reflections to come through, right? So it could be very easy to like overdo the highlighting too early on hair, right? Like you push and push, and then you have like no color, right? So it's like it's just like blown out. So one thing I would do is I would bring it back down. Okay. That way we can put the highlights back in. Right? She'll still read as blonde. Hello, Dragon Eye Miniatures, thanks for the Prime. Okay, so now that we've gotten some color back in, right, some of these mid-tones, right, now we can like push into the really light values and then across the grain, right? So running, let's go small, right? So we want that line. If this is the main view, we want that line to run with the grain, right? So we paint the lines with the grain, but the actual reflection runs perpendicular to the grain. So this would then flow like this. Right, and this would probably continue on to here a little bit. This one's quite good, but even here we might get like some that hits in these areas. This one kind of like this, right? Your placement is pretty good, but even here, like in this, you might get some reflection like inside here, some reflection on the outside like this. This would reflect kind of here, right? Okay, so just something like that, right? So knock it back, then add in the highlights, all right? As far as the skin and stuff, yeah, it looks good. It's cool. Okay. I hope that helps. Explaining hair a little bit more, right? Cool. Good. Swami Alex. I did this to practice for NMM. Specifically, I tried to push in lots of colors and reflections. I did not go for refinement. I'd love to see if I got the concept right. Okay, let's take a look. All right. So the colors and stuff are cool. Yeah, it's rough. I'm not going to comment really on like the blending and stuff, but there's one key to non-metallic metal. Okay? The number one rule of non-metallic metal is consistency of reflection placement. All right? It's the number one rule. And this is the thing that will like, if you get this wrong, it kills the illusion, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a spot, right? Let's pick the helmet, okay? If this is the reflection point, all right? I want to find anything that matches his head as like a sphere, okay? So there's a nice reflection right here. See where I'm drawing it? I need to find anywhere that matches that point, okay? In terms of shape, all right? So where else do you guys see that point on this model? There's a couple big ones. There's a couple like really clear ones, all right? Where do we see spheres? Kneecap, shoulders, right? Backpack. Yeah, backpack's a big one. I see, right? So we need to match those reflections on the backpack. The shoulder's a little tough because where it would reflect is sort of forward here to match the helmet, right? The knee would have a reflection right here. This one's maybe a little too far to the left. Okay, this right here, we're going to get a nice reflection like this. The toe is also spherical. We would get a reflection like that. Right here. Okay, so this is the key. This is the key thing for non-metallic. You have to be consistent with your light, with your reflections. All right. If you place a reflection, you've got this weird yellow reflection. You put it on this shoulder. Okay. Well, where is it here? Where is it here? Where is it here? Right. Shouldn't it be there? Okay. Probably should be there and there. Right. You sort of did it here, but shouldn't it be right there? It should probably show up on the knee over here. Right. It should show up on the foot. All right, so everything must be consistently placed. That is what sells the metallic effect, all right? The other thing is edges, right? That's number 2. Edge placement is also super important. I can see you've done it places, but like, I get you were sketching, but it really helps to you've really defined some edges and left some undefined, right? Like this would get a reflection similar to the top of the knee, right? Probably reflection here. Okay, if the knee is going to reflect like that, there would be a reflection here. This would get a nice strong reflection with strong edges. Then you blend and do whatever, okay? But consistency is everything. All right. And then like this one is probably too bright based on the shape. Like that one wouldn't really get that bright of a light based on the way the helmet is rendered, right? If the helmet's got like a dark color there, this should probably be dark. Okay. So let's look at the two, like both, right? Before and after. Right? Which one looks more metallic-y, right? Then neither of them are blended, but just based on the placement, right? Which one looks more like metallic? Hello, Polinsky. So just try and be consistent, okay? That's the number one tip. All right. And that, yeah, I love the colors and stuff. Looks really good. Okay. Spilbo Baggins. Hi Eric, I just finished this bust from Big Child and would love to know what you'd improve. Okay. Nada, ¿cómo estás contigo? ¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal? ¿Qué pasa contigo? Yeah, that would be more correct. Uh, okay. So, I think it's kind of working. Not so sure about all the black around the face. The dreads are also a little much. All right, so here's the things I would do. You're going to do this sort of OSL thing. I think you should play into it a little bit more. With the skulls, like I think you could actually lighten these up a little bit. Like the shadows here, maybe like a bit much. Like leave the ones in the blacks of the eye sockets, you know, but like I think you're going a little too dark in some areas based on like how close the flame is in proximity, right? So I think you could lighten this up a little bit. Hi, Dave. Okay, the next thing is I would play with the flame some more. So, like the OSL, lean into the OSL a little bit further, right? I'd maybe like to see some of that OSL, like on the arm, and a little more on the shadows of these like white parts, right? So yeah, I would play with like the flame and or like that glow and try and get it more like really like let it be part of the element of the scene, you know? Now, when it comes to this like black, okay, I think you've over highlighted the dreads. So I would try and tone these back some. Probably some sort of like warm, orangish, dark gray color. Mm. Uh, and then the black face paint would probably be quite glossy. I'm trying to think where I've seen this. What was the name of that game where you played as like the like Viking girl? Anyways, what I mean is basically like, is it Hellblade? I think they did it in Prey also, but like Hellblade? Yeah. This is exactly what I was thinking of. Right, so like if you look at the artwork here, I think you're just going too dark on the gray on the black. Like you could go with this more grayish tone to create some separation in the hair and the the like face paint here. All right. So maybe something more like this. I'm just going to do an add layer. Maybe it's actually like a slightly colder gray. It's going to be difficult for me to paint like over top of these perfectly. Yeah, I don't think you need to paint like this dark, right? You're going to get these like reflections on top of the black. As long as you have like some of the black in there, it should help. And now we give like a little more shape to the face. Right. Like the difference between that and that, right? This gives shape, right? And it still reads as like black. Okay, and it helps draw, yeah. More focus. Okay, so, yeah, and you can also try and get a little bit of this like green on the hair, maybe. That might be interesting. Just like in some lower spots, like, you know, let some of that like OSL come across a little bit more, right? Now the hair's not going to reflect that much, but you'll get some. Okay, cool. Next, Bruce Yee. Hi, I'm a sculptor and garage kit producer from Singapore. Is this our second Singapore? Yeah. Okay. This is a bust that I started and produced as resin kit. All right. Normally I can only watch the last 30 minutes of your Twitch stream. Okay. I want feedback on this lady. Lady, guy? I think it's a lady, right? I'm gonna go with that's a lady. Sometimes I'm not sure with these sort of like more Asian ones, like especially some of like the what's the name of that game? Dynasty Warriors characters and stuff tend to like some of the guys tend to be very androgynous, like very pretty boys, you know. So, but I think this is a girl. This is definitely a girl. Anyways, really nice looking so far, right? I think it's going quite well. I think this is another issue of Bruce, like our Bruce before, that you could definitely push some more like definition into some of these areas, right? So even using like a dark brown, right? Like let's try and create some like nice lines, right, to help separate some of this stuff. Okay. I'm not saying use pure black, but just like try and create some separation here, you know? Like this thing just floats on top. Like what is it? How is it rested on there? Like there should be, you know, something that like creates the line there. Right? It's like this edge is just not clean enough, right? You can see like the blue affecting the other one. So we need to clean up this edge, right? And these are the sort of things that like really will give like a finished look to your model, right? So go around, do this stuff. Now, I think you could put a little more light on the face based on this pink. Like, what happens if I put this pink on her face? It looks pretty bright. So I think you could lighten up the face a little more. Okay. Maybe not too yellow. That'll give a little more attention to the face, right? And then yeah, a lot of what I'm seeing is just cleanup stuff, right? It's like it's quite the detailed model, and these edges like are just they're just not quite clean enough, you know? Like all this stuff in here like needs nice separation, right? I'm seeing red on areas where it's not supposed to be, right? Some of the like line work is a little wonky, right? What's this like pink under here? Like take a dark blue, right? Something like this, and like paint the underside of this. Right. So that's the main thing I'm seeing. This is pretty nice. This like non-metallic. I think you could pop some of these like things some more. So like giving a bigger reflection like here, right? Like some of these little things could catch a little more light. Okay, so that's the big stuff for me. Just yeah, because like facial volume's rendered pretty well, the cloth is rendered pretty well, but yeah, there's just a lack of sharpness to everything. Okay. Doomboy665. Hello, welcome. Oh, Polinsky. Oh, I think I missed your prime. And did I miss Dragon Eye? I thought I got it. Thanks. I missed Will the Brush too. Or are these like different names? I don't know. Welcome everyone. Thanks for the primes, anyone. If I missed anybody, sorry. All right. What time are we at? Oh, we've been going for an hour and a half. All right. I'm gonna take a quick break. We just finished Brucey. So when we get back, we'll do Sunny. All right. So I will be right back. And we will continue looking at this stuff. All right, I'm back. Hello. Sunny. Sunny took my Cast Shadows class and back to basics at Adepticon, learned a lot. Thanks. He stripped the model and repainted it. What can he do better? Let's take a look. I like this angle. Shows some of the issues, but I think we can figure this out. All right. So, right now, I think there's some really nice things happening. some of the cast shadows and stuff are pretty cool. We got some nice work going on. But I think one of the big things I'm seeing is the softness of some of the volumetric shadows. Okay, so you have cast shadows, right? They're the same thing, but cast shadows and volumetric shadows. This is a cast shadow, this here, right? This is a cast shadow of the nose. But this line right here is a form shadow of the actual bridge of the nose. This here is a form shadow of the cheek, right? This might be a cast shadow of the lip, but then there should be a form shadow of the chin. This is a cast shadow of the face across the chest. This is a cast shadow of the shoulder, but this is a form shadow of the shoulder. All right. So we have to make sure that we're getting them right and that we have some color in between. Okay. So certain things need to be soft. All right. So here, what we want is this to be softer. Okay. These two should blend into each other more to create a soft shadow. All right. Because that's a soft form of the cheek. Okay. This is not bad. This is a form form shadow. Here, I see you're trying to do some like bounce lighting, which is pretty cool, but the bounce light should be quite subtle. All right. Okay, so it's just something like that, right? We blend these two together so that you get this soft shape here as the light rounds around her cheek. Okay, this works pretty well. Again, you've got the bounce light. Bounce light should be really subtle, which it's pretty good. But this needs to be more soft. Okay, so I'm going to grab a color like this. And I'm going to soften this out because this is rounded, right? So we want this shape to be more round. Okay, there's not this like super hard line here. This shoulder rolls over into the shadow. Okay, something like that. All right. Here on this is okay. All right, this is nice. This is pretty good. Now, one thing you can do is when you have this really hard line like this, you can actually you can take a little bit of color and like add it to the edge of the shadow to blur the shadow just a little bit so it's not like a perfectly sharp line, right? You get this like this little bit of like color separation in the shadow shape. Would the reverse be correct for the top of the what? I don't understand the question, Carvac. Okay, so something along those lines, right? The hair is pretty nice. I think this shadow would come over maybe a little bit more. Something like this. Okay. And based off the angle, like maybe this would actually be more in shadow down here. I don't know. You probably took a photo, so it might be just getting some of this wrong, but I think there might be like more form shadow there, right? There might be like a little bit of form shadow with a collar bone here. So it gets like way more complicated in some of these parts where it's like you're getting a combination of form shadow and cast shadow happening at the same time. But basically all you need to know is that like they're the same thing, you know, like they're both shadow. Okay. So, yeah. The other thing is you're going very black on the skin. Like this is super dark blue black. Okay. Well, the reds are not black enough for how black the skin gets, right? So if you're going to do these like super black shadows on the skin, well, red is a naturally darker value than the skin is, so the reds also need to get like extremely dark, okay? Like you kind of did it, you did it a bit over here, but it could be like even darker. All right. Or you bring up the light. Like this is maybe a bit too blue. Like maybe something slightly more grayish would work better. Because even like a pure gray, right? Like if I put a pure gray on her skin, it's going to read blue because like this is pure gray, right? It's going to read blue because of the contrast to like all the orange, all right? So maybe not like pure blue, okay? Maybe something like slightly more subtle. All right, you can make that work, okay? But the general lighting is quite nice. I think you just need to make sure you get really understand like some of these are like form and some of these are cast, okay? And knowing which one is which, and get it in and like making sure that certain ones are more rounded and certain ones are more sharp, right? So you can see sort of the difference here, right? See how look, everything looks like super sharp, and then this like rounds some of those shapes out. Right, so we get certain areas that are like soft and certain areas that are sharper. Now you also would get some shadows in some areas like this, right? Knowing that the light's coming this way, you'd probably get some more shadow in some of these areas. But this is like super like nitpicky. Okay. Right, even like shadows like this. Right, I hope that's helpful. Pretty nice. Okay. Yep. Colin, here's my entry for the feedback session. This one was inspired by your versions. Any feedback on what to improve would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay. Let's save it. I know you saved. Don't lie to me. All right. Something about it being oversaturated, but not too worried about that. Okay. So so far, I think it's I mean, it's nice and smooth. I feel like there's probably some airbrushing going on. But it's probably a little too smooth. Okay? What I mean by that is like her face doesn't really have any shape to it. Okay, so I'm not really getting some of the planes as much as I like. Like this one's pretty good, but I think you could really like lean into some of the shape of the face or like more. So like if I think about where you're going to typically see shadow, let's get like a nice shadow color, something like this. Let's darken it down. Right? Like I expect to see like some strong shadow right here. Okay? It's pretty normal. All right? I expect to see some strong shadow underneath her chin, right? Or underneath the lower lip. Some shadow here. I want to define her nose more, right? Maybe not that much, but like, okay. Define this. All right, what else? Okay, so you've got this really strong highlight on the forehead, but I don't really get it on the cheek. So there's this shape here of the cheek, right? This sort of shape. I'm just going to draw it in. Right, draw it in. And then I can blend it out, right? Where else do I have a shape? I'm going to grab a sort of mid-tony pink, right? I get another shape like here, this sort of triangle. Okay. So it looks sort of weird like this, where it's all super zoomed in, but then when we sort of zoom out, you can see a bit more of that, like what's happening. So now I can take something that's sort of in between, right? And I can begin to like blend these together. Okay. And like round it over. Now you should see the difference, like from this, where it was at the beginning, to this, where it's like there's now like more shape to the face. Okay, it's more clear, like the lot, like the light and the forms of the face are more evident. All right, instead of just being like so super soft. Okay, the other thing is fixing the hairline. You sort of just have like this. It's like you come from like the top of the ear and go up. But if you, can I even show you? Like, or is my hair too long? No, I think I can. Right. So what shape is it? It's the hair comes across like this, then it goes down, right? And there's like this square here. Okay. So the hairline is like across the forehead, down, and then like it does this other little thing. So I'm going to just draw it for you. Right, so it's like this hair line would come back like this, and then it would come down like that, and then it would do this little thing. That might not be perfectly shaped, right? But it's going to be a little more like that, okay? Huh? The stark shadow on the nose? I'm just showing that it needs to be defined, okay? So, something like that, and then you can tone this back if you want to then like blend it in, like it's really shaved short, so you can come back with the original color and like soften this out. All right, so that it looks shaved closer, but that's that like hairline that you're looking for, okay? So even if it's buzzed, like it's still, that hairline is still there, so you need that shape, okay? Instead of just like a perfectly like this curve, right? Which is not really how it is, okay? The leather you could maybe do a little more texture on, but it's okay. I think it looks all right. But yeah, the face is the big thing for me. It's just like getting some of these a little bit more shape and form to everything, all right? Do her too soft and it looks kind of just like amorphous, you know? Like it's just too round. Okay. Next. Yeah, it's striking a balance, right? Because you kind of have the opposite problem that Sunny had, right? Where it's like Sunny's cheekbone is like too defined, right? It's like too sharp of a line. And yours is like, you just have, it's just too soft, okay? So, finding that balance. All right. Kajora. The last piece I'm working on. Still have some refinement to do here and there. Dark lining, of course. But would love to have your overall feedback on the light placement, the value in different materials. I'm also very confused with the hair, even though I know the theory. Do you know the theory? Because we talked about the theory earlier. You should know the theory now if you watch through the whole video, unless you just skip straight to yours. Okay. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of noise because of the blood splatter and stuff. Yeah, so, okay. So there, you have a bit of the same problem that we had with the goblin earlier, where like some of your whites, you're going too dark, right? So instead of going to like black and all these shadows, like you don't need to go all the way to black. You can use like a more tan or something for like the shadows of the fur. So like don't dark, you want a dark line to separate the fur from the stomach and from the belt, but you don't want to like all these dark lines in the actual fur, okay? So, right, like this line is too thick, okay? And it's too shadowed. So that's gonna make it look softer. Right, and then you can grab a lighter color and kind of like give a little more form to it. Light placement is pretty good, but again, it's like there's probably too much texture to some of these things because it's supposed to have like the blood splatter, but then I'm also getting like this dotted texture for the skull, right? The bone should be pretty smooth. Like there's cracks and stuff, but it's not like, this is more like almost granite, you know? So So probably too rough here. Again, you're going like pretty dark on some of the shadows. Like, I don't know what's happening in the, like, this is like the fur and leather, right? So tone down some of the texture on this stuff. Doesn't need to be quite so textury, all right? Like this is just like getting completely lost. All right, so you need some like edge definition on these like ropes and stuff. And then for the hair, for the eye makeup, look at what I talked about earlier. But for the hair, like we need to start getting into some of these like more orange tones for the red instead of going quite so pink. So like we need some highlights in here. All right. The overall form first and then highlights, right? So like this braid has like no highlights on it. So it's just becoming kind of lost. Okay, then you can push up the light even more to these like nice sunny sort of highlights in here. Don't overdo it, and this might actually be too orange. Maybe I need to desaturate that a little bit. Something like a sunny skin tone works well for doing this sort of thing. But yeah, you need some highlights in the hair. Okay. Same with like on if we want to define these braids, right? Like they need little spots to highlight them, right? Okay, shape of the stomach's pretty good here because this shadow maybe is a little strong. I know she's pretty buff, but can be kind of easy to overdo that on ladies. I like this highlight here, but probably want a little bit of highlight on the shoulder. And then she's just like missing some on her face, right? Like she really needs to have like a highlight on her forehead because her face is just like so dark compared to the rest of her. All right, so try and push some light up here some more. Clean up the like shape of the mouth. Again, push some light onto this stuff. Okay. The hand's a bit of a mess too, but okay. Yeah, so like some of this stuff looks like really nice and rendered, and then other parts like it's just too much. Like it's just so filthy, like so dirty looking that it's not reading as like dirty, and instead it's just reading as just like yeah, mess, like messy paint and not messy bandages, you know, or messy wraps. Okay, so striking again, it's sort of like the camouflage conversation we had, right? Where it's striking that balance between like defined and readable and weathering. Okay. Do you highlight face tattoos? Yes. When we talked about it a couple models ago. But yeah, you do highlight them, right? It's like, it's not like she's wearing Vanta Black. She would have some kind of highlight like across like this, right? Okay. Marcus. Hi, Eric. Thanks a lot for doing this. I'm currently working on this model right now, and I feel the 3/4 view doesn't fully work. Maybe I need to work more value on the shadow side. I would appreciate general comments. Okay. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I like sort of the idea. These are tough. These like cartoony. I think these are deceptively hard. These like historics models that they did, because it's really striking a balance between that cartoony style and like it's knowing what to render. Okay. I think of kind of like the Incredibles or something like that. Like, where do you choose to really emphasize the detail and where do you choose to like soften things? Okay. So if I was to take a model like his face, all right, and I ask you like, what are the sort of the key features of his face, right? Like one is the sort of elongated nature to his face, like the strong chin, right? But also sort of the nose. Yeah, he's got like this big bridge to the nose, very elongated face, right? But if we look, and then sort of his eyebrows, right? He's got this sort of expression on. Okay. So I think you're kind of overdoing it in some spots. Let's see, I love that like you use like a light, like a mid-tone gray for the white hair. One is like the face is maybe a little orange, right? It's like, I think we could get like just a little bit more red in the face. So what I want to do is I want to focus on sort of like the main features, right? So what is he like? This, I feel like this part of his chin here is like a main feature. And based on the lighting coming from the top right, you know, I want to try and like really focus on his jawline here, like this shadow of his jaw. I'm going to redraw some of this in a second, but I want to just like get the shapes in, right? So it's like this, right? Almost like I'm cell shading him. Okay, what else? His nose, right? So we got some light that comes across his nose like this, right? Maybe you get sort of this shape. And this can kind of connect here. Then we have light here, but this is like in shadow based off of that shadow, so we can sort of soften this. And then if the light's coming in from this way, we can kind of connect here, right? Something like that. Okay. Then this, but then this is like super shadowed. Okay. So here, let's take this. Let's just get this shape in, right? So his nose, right? The bottom of his nose should be in shadow. We have to now darken this to outline it some more. All right, let's get the shape of his nose back just so you can see it. Okay, and then this shape, right, his mouth. Right, all this is nice and shadowed. We can add a little shadow here. All right, so that's where I think the shadows should go. Okay, everywhere I just drew. All right, maybe this is nice and shadowed a little bit too. Okay, so I'm trying to like draw the face, right? Draw the shape of the light. Okay, now I'm going to take some of this light. So I'm going to grab a little mid-tone-y color, slightly less, slightly more pink, just a little bit more orange, right? I'm going to soften some features that I think you've placed in the shadow, but I think should really be a little more in the light, right? So like this, right? It's like a little too dark, okay? Maybe this is like slightly too dark. And then we can start to like blend some of this together. Okay, now we can blend this a little bit. We can blend this shape, right? All right, now let's take some highlights and let's throw some highlights on them. Okay, I'm going to soften that even a little bit more. Like this is facing towards the light. We don't need that eye bag to be quite so heavy, you know? Get some of this more yellowish tone. Right, he's got his chin, this shape, these like corner of the mouth shapes. Okay. And then what? So now we've got his like we can darken some of these areas like a little bit more, right? Or we need to just push it down a little bit. And then what's his neck going to do here? The light comes across like this, yeah? So we need to create the shadow of his neck, and that's going to put all this in shadow, yeah? But then this part of his neck is in light, so we can really just place that in light. Okay? So something like that. Yeah? So, yeah, sort of before and after, right? So it's like we're trying to focus really on like the key characteristics more. Okay, so like I said, that this shadow under his mouth is quite strong. His nose should be really like a key feature, right? These these high cheekbones, but without like overdoing it. And then these bags under his eyes, like you don't have to shadow those as much, you know? If you want, you can sort of do this one, but you don't have to do both. Okay? I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. Right? Like this doesn't have much shape to it. This has shape to it. Yeah. All right. Sir Gwent. I've only been mixing primary colors on the entire piece and I'm stumped on the NMM. Okay. Let's see. So first, I don't know if it's really this dark, but it is a very dark piece overall. So I think, are you in the chat? Sir Gwent, are you with us? But right now everything is like pretty like just sort of muddy gray, which can happen when mixing primary colors, but I think you need to push the light like a lot, right? Like I'm going to start to put some lights on top of this guy. And kind of show you just how like crazy dark everything is at the moment. Right? Like the problem is I don't know if it's really this dark based off of the photo. Because if that dot in his eye is actually white, this is something totally different, right? Like, is this white? Because right now it's like a medium gray. Okay. Very hard for me to judge based off of this, but I think like generally like the shapes of this stuff is going pretty well. It's so dark it's hard to see. Like I know this figure a little bit because of given feedback and judged painted versions of this before, but I think you want to push some of this, like definitely a lot more, like way more contrast on some of this stuff. And yeah, like try and get some like nice highlights here, right? Okay. So that's the big thing for me is what I'm seeing is just like there's no light whatsoever. And then yeah, you can come back and start to like really add some of the like the edge definition and stuff. Right, like these things need to be have the edges defined. Cool. Like that's painted, isn't it? I doubt it's this dark. But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is. But yeah, you need to punch that up more too. Okay. Push the light. Based off this picture, I think it is just like super dark. All right, Ginger Bat. Getting close to the finish line with this one, comp deadlines and all that, so I'm really just looking for an overall sense check. I haven't started the skull yet, and I'm struggling with how to pull that off. It's supposed to be like some kind of rock skull thing, I guess. Definition and stuff looks pretty good. I like the little gem in the in the crown thing. That's neat. Yeah, I think this is going pretty well. Back is a little dark and maybe a little too stripy. But what I would go with is this is probably some kind of like jade sort of thing. So really what this comes down to is just like quality in edge highlights, right? So if you're gonna go with this like skull design, like I wouldn't over try and complicate it with like veins and stuff in it. Just like sharp. Just like make it sharp, you know? Like simplify the volumes as much as you can, right? Like nice flat edges and sides, like just the planar volumes of this skull, and then grabbing some sort of color like this, and then like, right? So it's like we get these nice, this nice shape to everything, right? Like these are nice hard lines. And it's like a little too flat for me to see exactly what's going on, right? With like how it's painted right now, and I'm not familiar enough with this figure to say for sure. But then yeah, just like getting these nice edge highlights and stuff on here is going to go a long way to sort of defining all these shapes, right? So it's like simplify the volumes and just get the volumes like kind of nice flat solid colors, and then don't worry too much about the blending aspect of it because it's supposed to be very geometric, right? It's instead just like getting the shapes, the like planes of the skull form in, and then just like edge highlighting where it needs it. Okay. Oops, I didn't do the on and off thing, but yeah. Yeah, some of this stuff is nice. I would try and clean these up a little bit just as a quick tip. Like, this is a little sloppy. Try and like come back in and really get that like tight, you know? Anywhere else like here, this could be a little more clear. Okay. I think you could push the light on the face just a little bit more also. Just try and like I like this his big bulby chin, you know. maybe try and just push it just a little bit more. To help draw a little more attention to the face. All right. Yeah, looking cool. Curious what you're going to do with the base. And yeah, the back is a little flat. So, yeah, and this, like, these aren't clean enough, right? They're like, they don't really sell as like spots. They're like a little too brush strokey, right? So I try and get those a little more clear on like what sort of shapes they're supposed to be. Okay. They look more like paint splotches than actual, what's it called? Patterning. How many more do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, let's just try and get through them. All right. Hi Eric. I have finished this mini. I would love to hear your thoughts on how it can be improved. I focused on values, as you often emphasize in your stream, and left out the fancy stuff like OSL, rim lights, and cast shadows. Don't need them. Just paint a nice looking model. Thanks in advance. Sorry for the unfinished clam. Okay, so the clam is not done. Okay, so one, I don't know, is this a 3D print or what's happening here? Like, what's going on with this? She looks like she's got some. What was the thing in Game of Thrones? You guys remember? What was it? Grayscale? Is that what it was called? What was the thing that, yeah. It was like she's got a skin disease. Yeah, I mean, I think... Set your focus on values. Let's see how your values are doing. I think they're not bad. I think the hair could be a little darker. I think there could also be a bit more contrast between the dress. I think the dress and the skin could have a bit more contrast. So let's see what we can do. So for the dress, I think one thing we can do is, unless you're going for like a tan, or like a sheer dress, what I would do is I would consider changing it to more of a bluish color. So this is going to help to separate it from the skin. It's also going to help with the idea of like the Venus, right? So it's like more aquatic feeling. Okay, so instead of like a tan, you can go a little more bluish with it. And then, yeah, I think we can push the lights more so we can get closer to a white here. right? Something like that. Now let's check the values. Okay. Give it to me. Oh, go to the top. Oh my god. I'm dying, guys. Go underneath. Right? So before, right, you couldn't really tell. After, right? So here's without the color and just making it more white. So if you want to just make it more white, you could do this and leave the kind of tan. If you want to like create even more contrast between the skin and the cloth, you could shift the color also to like a more cool tone. And then I think with the hair, let's make another layer. I think with the hair we could darken it just a little bit more. Something like a slightly darker brown. Create more then you have to put back in highlights, but that's going to help create more contrast that way. Okay. And yeah, you got to work on the clam, but looks cool. And even then, I would consider maybe just pushing a couple little highlights on her skin in a couple areas, like maybe lighten this a little bit. This is pretty good, but you could brighten up her face just a touch. Just a few key spots. I don't know what's going on with this 3D print or whatever, but it is rough. And give her a nice highlight like on her leg. And I think that would help quite a bit. Okay. Mere Mortal. Hi, Eric. First time caller, long time listener. Oh. Thanks. Looking for advice on this 28mm. Still lots of it work in progress. I need to rework the skin, so I didn't finish it, but I'm trying to recreate the scene from Final Fantasy X in the background with the sun setting. Okay. So what you're worried about is this, where it's just silhouette. What you're kind of thinking is something more along this lines. Okay. And what you're sort of at is here. So let's look at something. Let's look at the art. What do you see? Are you in the chat, by the way? Does everybody just watch these afterwards? Mere Immortal, are you here? Oh, you are here. So what I want you to do is I want you to look and see what color are sort of the highlights on her here. Okay? Do you feel like it's particularly noticeable in the hair and I think the skin? Okay? How do you feel like what happens to the highlights? Yeah. So you're getting more of this yellowish tone. And then, so this is tough because you did it. What could make this work better actually is if you just get rid of the like setting sun on the actual water. Might make it work more. So let's play around with something, okay? And then here, let's look at this image. I actually am going to grab this image, okay? Did I save yours also? Let's save yours too. I'll just use this image because I can see more of the backdrop with it. Because one, she's hiding it anyways, so you don't really need it. But let's take yours. And let's take the image you're kind of working off of. All right. What color do you think this palm tree is? Any guesses? If I was to color pick it, what do you think it's going to be? Because I bet it's not black. It's like a dark red, right? So we can use that. Okay, so let's play around with some of this color, right? So when you're dealing with this really strong light, one thing you want to remember is like as things get further in the distance, they start to lose shadow, okay? So when you're dealing with things far away, so like these rocks that are like gray right now, what they really should be is like this color, but even lighter, right? So they're gonna like lose a bit of color as they get further away, right? So things in the distance, like it's like if you look at a mountain in the distance, right? It's like starts to turn the color of the sky, right? It starts to turn more blue. So that's one way to help out, right? Let's look at what else we were dealing with. Okay, what else happens to the sky in this picture? What do we got? We got these like nice strong oranges in the clouds, right? So I think you could really like play around with that a little bit. Right? Let's make some of this stuff, right? So like you got these nice strong oranges, okay? And then what happens further up in the sky, right? Now we're starting to get to these like lavender colors, right? These like purpley lavender tones. Okay, something like this, right? Now, what about the water? Well, sure looks a lot like pink to me. All right, so maybe this needs to be a little more pink. Okay, so what's going to happen to, what do you think is going to happen to the white of her? What is the dominant color in the scene? All right, if the water, which is like grayish blue, right, what is going to happen to the shadows of her clothes, right? The white shadows of her clothes. What color do you think they're going to turn? All right, so this is how you play with atmosphere. Okay, you have to pull some of the color from your scene into all the colors elsewhere. All right, and then boom, what do we need? We need like these more light yellowish oranges, right, in the intermediate tones, and then we get into like whites, right? So it's still going to read as white. We just pick up some of this color that you have, because like the actual rendering on the figure is good, right? But we need to like glaze in some of this color, okay? And then like on her skin, right? Like get some of this yellow, like this yellowish tone in there, you know? Get it in her hair. What color does her hair look in the artwork you sent, right? It's like a strong brown color, you know? So it's got that like that reddish brown in it, okay? So we gotta get some of that in there, you know? So anywhere we can, we want to try and reflect some of these colors in to the scene, okay? So things like her dress, which is like a blue, it's going to start to shift a little bit purple, right? And then as we get to the lights, what happens? It starts to turn orange. So we're going to get just a touch of that orange in there. And then at the pure lights, we get to this like nice sunny skin tone sort of color, right? So now we're like really playing with some of the ambience, right? So the lighting is still head on, right? But we're trying to force the ambience more, okay? I mean, everything, like her boots would get little like pinkish orange reflections in them, right? You just go through this color palette, right? Okay. So just shift your shadows a little more like pale pink purple, even towards these like deep reddish magentas, right? And then as you move up in the light, slowly just like mix a little bit of that light color in there, right? That like warm, sunny orange light, okay? And it affects everything. All right. Who next? Margaret. First time here, working on the Magician miniature. I want to make sure I wanted to try and use more textures in my work. On the sleeves and the hat in this case, I also tried for the first time to paint another source of light in the back. It's all work in progress, but can you give me some advice, especially on the non-metallic metal? I only use brushes for painting if that's important. No. Suggestions would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's look at it. The backlight source looks pretty good, to be honest. I think you could probably get some more on that sleeve. Yeah, it works. All right, let's look at the front. So, not bad, not bad. All right, I can see you're doing like a heavy stitch kind of wool linen thing. I think that works. I like the sort of texture you're doing on the leather. The hat is okay. I get what you're trying to do. I'm not so sure it plays with the character entirely, because when I think of these like kind of Asian Chinese sort of characters, I tend to think of more silk, as opposed to like this texture feels more like what a fez would be made out of. You know, what is that like? It's like felt, right? This works. This like linen sort of ghee kind of texture, I think, is working quite well. This one I'm not so sure about. It just doesn't read as like the material I would be expecting here. Where this is like, you know, got these like nice sharp kind of highlights. Like this is supposed to be a silk, which I think works quite well. I feel like this image kind of blown out? What if we did that? Let me see if this looks better. Hold on. Curves? Where's curves? Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. I'm gonna guess this looks a little more like the actual model. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know if this works. I think I would go with like a silk effect here. I get like trying to do some stippling and stuff, but I think a silk, like more shiny sort of effect might work better. I could be wrong. You guys feel free to tell me if I'm incorrect on what this like sort of priest guy would be wearing, like what kind of fabric he would be wearing, but silk is sort of what I think. Um, yeah, I think like this stuff's working well. Um, so when you do non-metallic effects like this, try and pick one side to be a little more uh like enforce this one side a little more. Okay, like, and then this also has to get the edge. This is nice. I think you could push the light a little bit further. Here on the dragon thing, like, probably want to have a section of it be like a bit brighter. Right, something like this. Like this works nice, but yeah, you can have one like edge show up more. This reads metallic-y to me. This also reads pretty metallic-y, but the light is like sort of off to the side where I would expect it to be a little more in the middle. Okay, and then like you have this sharp highlight here, but that needs to reflect here, and it's like if that's gonna go like that, right? So you just want to be consistent with like, okay, this goes on this edge, this goes across this whole edge, and this goes across this edge, right? So when you hold it like this, right, it's like 1, 2, 3 tangents, right? Tangents. Yeah. I think maybe. So this can be really tough because, like, when you're doing this sort of texture work, like, try and go a little longer with it. Like, these parts can be kind of tough where you have it, like, it's all this looping, but try and, like, when you do in the brush strokes, try and go just a little longer, right? If you do them too short, like, you're not going to get the, like, weave feeling that you want. Hello, Jonas. Right, so try and be just like a little bit longer with them, and then you can come in and like add highlights with like shorter lines at the end. Okay, it's similar to doing hair in this way, but yeah, like you want that line work to be nice and long, right? Because it's supposed to be like the thread going all the way through. And just use that line work to create the highlights, right? This is also a little weird where you've like done it this way. I think it would probably go the other direction. So it would probably be more like this. Right, I painted that over, but just trying to show like where I would expect that highlight to be. And yeah, silk basically acts like a non-metallic, so it could actually give you a little more practice on NMM by trying to render this like really shiny. Okay. But cool. Yeah, the hands and the face look quite nice. Don't have much to say there. One thing I would say on the face is that like you could go a little lighter with like this part of the beard, right? So like it got a little dark, and you kind of want it to like blend into the skin because the hairs grow like out of the face, right? But that's cool. Hope that was helpful. Texture work seems nice, yeah. I would continue with this effect, right? Just do more of what you got going on here. So like make this stuff shine. All right. Who's next? Who's last? Ruben. I've been blah, 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 blah. Hi Eric, I've been implementing the feedback you gave me on my fallen angel bus and all the information on OSL that you've discussed on Twitch and YouTube. On this bus, I wanted to apply color similar to the night jungle scene in Avatar. Okay. General feedback would be much appreciated, but I'm having a hard time with the light effects from a large mushroom on the left shoulder. The large mushroom on the left shoulder. This shoulder? These mushrooms? There's so much detail. And that looks pretty good. Booty warning. Okay. And then you're going for this sort of effect. All right. Let's look at it. So, what do we think? Pretty good. I think honestly, like the figure's going pretty well. I think there's some I like the warmth of the baby here. The faces of the lady's pretty nice. I think there could use a little more definition in spots like around the nose and stuff. But so the mushrooms, okay? I've talked about source lighting. So when you're doing source lighting, like this is too black, right? This is way too dark for a thing that's emitting light, okay? So the thing that's emitting light, let me, like should never be darker than like the color that it's making, right? So if it's making this like turquoisey green color, like a pure turquoisey green should be the darkest thing on this mushroom. All right. No reason for it to be like here. What are these mushrooms making? Like a magenta-y color, right? So they should be like pure of this color. Okay. If they're actually emitting a light source. Things emitting light sources do not have shadows. Right, and then you can push them up to white to make them glow even more, like be even brighter. Huh? I think the large mushroom are the table fungus growing out of the upper left arm itself. What? These? No, these aren't supposed to be emitting light. I'm pretty sure he's talking, or she is talking about these. But yeah, so Right. So they need to be actually be like light effects. It's like we're talking about the lightsaber. Just the edge, you know, shows the red. The actual thing in the middle shows the white, you know? Okay. Or unless you're talking about, oh, these giant things. Okay. Well, there's a lot of light sources going on, but let's stick with these for now. All right, just so that we can stay on a topic. All right. So now what do? Now we can start to dole that light source out. So how we have to determine what the radius, the effect of this thing is. Okay. What is the like zone of influence of the mushrooms, right? So we can basically, let's put it on another layer. All right. Hello, Odd Kitten. Thanks for the follow. All right. So we can take this zone of influence and go like, all right, is it here? Like this is where it's going to be the most intense, and then it's going to be half as strong there, or a quarter as strong. Technically, it's a square root as strong there. All right. Then it's like this. Okay. So we can start to play with that, right? And we have to come in. We'll make an add layer, right? And anything that affects, I'm just going to take an airbrush, right? Just make it nice and big. And I'm just going to, bam, right? Something like this. That's way too much on that one. Okay, so you can see it starts to like glow, right? But those mushrooms, they have to glow, right? They have to feel like they're emitting light, okay? And then based on how far that is, right, you come in and you start to add the light like as this affects. Now you have to think about all these shapes and everything and where it's actually going to catch light and where it's not. And then the distance that it affects, it's like, would it affect the like horns up here? Probably, but barely, right? It's like just a little bit, okay? Because it's like they can maybe hit there, but they're getting far enough away that it's like it barely touches, all right? So this is for everything, all of these things, right? And they all add together. And then you get weird, messed up areas like where these two start to overlap, and that's a whole nother topic of like what happens when a magenta light and a turquoise light mix together, right? Because I promise you it's maybe not what you think it is. In fact, I'll show you. What do you think happens when I take, let's put this on a regular layer. What happens when I take that color? And what happens when I take this color and mix them together? Well, when I mix them together like this, right? Let's do it on a layer. Okay, if I just do that and then set this to like a percentage, right? What do we get? Do we get this like purpley gray color, right? This is like blue. But that's not how additive light works. And what really happens, okay. It's just white. All right, so anyways, now you got these guys, all right? So if they're supposed to be glowing also, well, then we gotta like make them glow, you know? So what color are they glowing? Or they gotta be light, you know? And then how does that light affect all this other stuff around it? All right, and then what's the level of influence of this thing? All right, how far out does it shine, right? And then it's most intense, like right near the mushroom. Okay. And is the baby supposed to be like also kind of glowing? Like, is there some sort of like golden light coming from inside? Do we need to add like a yellow light sort of on the flowers around here? Right? Like, is there this like warmth and sunny sort of like incubation thing happening in her stomach that's like emitting a light also? Like, could think about all those things, you know? But the general sort of effect is good. You just have to like understand that when you're doing these light sources, that it's really like, no, it is a light source. It cannot have shadow. It can only be light, right? Okay. Other than that, meh, I don't have much to say. Yeah, there's definitely like some more definition and things that can be done a lot of, but I assume this is still work in progress. So obviously there's a lot of stuff that can be like sharpened up and more defined. This is like around here is looking great, right? But it's like the rest of the flowers and things also needs that same level of treatment. All right. Cool. Make sense? Hope it was helpful to everyone in the feedback. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. MFCA is next weekend, so as always, I take a week off of Feedback Friday anyways, but if you're also coming to MFCA in Philadelphia, come say hello. And yeah.